Hi, Scrappers. I want to show you this lovely plaid page tonight. I'm Alice Fung from Morgantown, Pennsylvania, and this is a super simple, easy class that I did on my Tune In Tuesday uh, session tonight, and I want to make sure that I show a whole bunch of you. So let me pin my screen so you can see it up close. It's a beautiful page, super simple. What you're going to need is two colors of cardstock, and I picked the Island Waters teal color and a dark teal color, as well as some white for your border that I put around the outside of the page. And then you also want a piece of scrap paper because we're cutting out a bunch of squares and we need something to tape them down onto that's going to be that 12 by 12 size. So what I always do is I take the paper that comes in my paper packs and I use that as background paper, scrap paper, the white side, it's photo safe. So why not use it as white paper? So what I'm going to do is actually tape my squares and things for my Argyle page right down onto this scrap paper. So the first thing I'm going to do is take out my ruler. And I have a zero centering ruler from Creative Memories. I am going to mark the 6-inch mark on my paper on all sides. So you can put your piece of paper down. If you have the 13 by 13 inch mat, there is a ruler all the way around the edge of your 12 by 12 piece of paper. Or you can take a ruler and just put a mark where your 6-inch mark is. So I'm just going to mark where my 6-inch marks are on each side. Then I'm going to take my ruler and I am going to draw my lines and just make a big cross on my page. Don't worry, this is going to be covered up and with all the pieces. So we're just going to make a big cross. Now what I'm going to do is I am going to take my pieces of teal color paper. I am going to stack them because I'm going to cut them the exact same size. So why cut twice when I can stack them and cut both papers the same size? And what I need are, of each color, is 4 squares that are 4 1/4 by 4 1/4. So I'm going to take my paper, like I said, I'm going to stack it. So both colors are in there. I'm going to put it at the 4 1/4 inch mark. And I'm going to cut a strip. Oh, and make sure you go all the way through before you move it. So because it's stacked, the top piece did cut. I just want to make sure I got through. Okay, then I'm going to stack it again. And I am going to cut again the same thing, 4 1/4, and make another strip. 4 1/4. And we're going to cut it through. And I didn't do 4 1/4. Okay, so much for the videotape. So make sure you put it at 4 1/4 and not 3 1/4. And we are going to 4 1/4, and we're going to cut. Okay, we'll just get rid of the rest. Then what I'm going to do is take my 4 1/4 inch strips stacked. I am going to put them back in my trimmer at 4 1/4 inch, turn sideways, and that will make my squares. So I have now 2 squares because I stacked the paper, and I need 4 of each color. So I'm just going to move this over and do 4 1/4. Make sure it's on 4 1/4. And I have my 2 squares. Again, I'm going to do my other strip, turn it sideways, stack it, make sure all my edges are lined up, put it at 4 1/4 And again, same thing, 4 1/4. So I have 4 squares of both colors. Okay. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take one of these colors, just one square. I'm going to put tape in 4 corners. And once my protector is down on my page, it is going to hold it in place. So I don't have to worry about taping every edge. I only put a little tape on each of the corners of my papers when I put them down, of my pictures, because like I said, once your protector's on there, you're not going to be able to lift it up. So now what I'm going to do is take this square, I'm going to put it on the center of my page, matching up the corners to the lines that I drew. So it's perfectly centered because it's covering those lines that I drew on the page. Now what I'm going to do is take the other color squares and I'm going to tape them around the outside of the square in the center. And I'm just going to butt up the edges of the squares so that they are right next to the dark teal. Right up against that. And if you notice, the corners of my my squares are meeting the edges of the paper. And if they're not quite on the edge, don't worry, because if you remember my original page idea, I actually had a frame around my Argyle page. So it'll be covered. So I have that all set up. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my 3 remaining squares and I'm going to cut them in half into triangles. So we'll do one at a time. Take your trimmer and put the top point and the opposite point on your cutting line. So you can see where your cutting line is. Just make sure that those 2 points are on your cutting line, and you're going to cut each one of these squares into triangles. That's 2, and the third one. So this third one, we're going to cut into 2 triangles, just like the others. And then I'm going to take these 2 triangles and I'm going to cut them again into smaller triangles. So take the long edge of your triangle here, put it up against the ruler of your trimmer and move the point to your cutting line. And that's going to give you the exact same size triangles on the smaller version. Same thing with the other one. Take the longer side of your triangle up against the ruler, the backboard of your, where your paper should go, and the point should be on that cutting line, and that's going to make the same size triangles. And now it's just a matter of taping all your triangles into the holes that are still left on the page. So I just put some tape on each one, and I'm filling in, making sure that the cardstock is up against the cardstock. Don't worry about the edges of your white paper showing through on the edge, because like I said, if you can see, there is a little bit of white showing on here. That's okay. I am going to cover that with a border around the outside of my page just to frame it, and it's going to look beautiful. So I put that up. You can cut off the edge or out of tape. And then we put this in our edges. So now we have our our big triangles in. And what we're going to do next is tape in our smaller triangles, which are going to go in the corners. And we're just going to butt up again, cardstock to cardstock, so that it is covering the background of the paper. It's making this beautiful square look, and you can use this by itself as a page, but I'm going to show you how to give it that Argyle look in just a second. That's fine. And you can see I'm covering that background paper up very well. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw lines. If you remember, my original had the dark lines to give it that Argyle look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mark with my fine tip marker. I'm just going to mark the center of each square. So it would be 2 1/8 inch, just so you have an idea of where your ruler is going to come across, because I'm going to trace those lines. 1, 2. I'm just, like I said, it's just 2 1/4 inches, and do this in the center of each of your squares so you have an idea of where that line should be running across. And do it this way as well, so you have an idea of where that 2 1/8 inch line should be running. 1, 2 1/8. Now we're going to do it this way. 2 1/8. And then I can see exactly the lines that I'm following. 2 1/8. 2. Okay. So now what I'm going to do is take the bold end of my marker, and I am going to run from the corner of my page down. Oh, I want to make sure I mark it this way as well. 1. Okay, what I'm going to do is take my ruler from the corner of my page and just follow those markings so that I can draw a nice fat line right through corner to corner, following the center of those squares. So I'm going to do it one side, and then I'm going to do it on the other way. Just following corner to corner, following my markings. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the smaller boxes as well. So I'm going to mark it where the 2 1/4 inch spot is, so I have an idea on each side. 2, not a quarter, 2 1/8. I'm sorry. 2 1/8. So now when I put my ruler down, I know exactly where my line's going to go, and I can do the fat line across. I'm also going to do it right across where the papers meet up next to each other, just to keep that Argyle look going. And again, on the Argyle edges of the 2 cardstocks where they meet. Oops. I'm drawing on the ruler instead of on the paper. And then one more over here. Mark 1, 2, and 8. Find where my ruler goes. My lines are that way, and now I just have to do my lines this way. So it's just a matter of making sure your lines, and I'm marking in the boxes, I'm marking it where it hits 2 1/8 inch, because that would be the center of my squares. And then I'm just going to follow those lines to give it the, like I said, the Argyle look. You can see it coming into effect right now. Make sure you do the lines where the two cardstocks meet up. And by using that bold tip marker, you're really getting a good line in there so you can see it. Okay, and there's your Argyle page, looking so beautiful. You can use your page just like this, or you can finish it off like I did, using a border around the edge. And for this one, I used the Floral Peaks border punch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut one more for you. I do have 3 already cut that I will put down. The border punch is a freestanding punch. It's not part of our border system. It's its own punch. You actually put your paper in on this. There's a line here to tell you exactly where to start the punch. So I am going to put my paper edge in on that line, move it down, and there's a design right on the side of the tray where my paper is coming through. And I cover the punched edge here with the design on that tray. It'll match up perfectly to tell you where the next punch will be. There's even a little notch on the top edge of this paper. If you can see, there's a little notch along here that tells you exactly, and there's a notch on here that you can line up, as well as the punched out pieces, to know exactly how far and exactly where the next punch will start. So let me just dump out all my little border debris. There we go. So my Argyle page is ready for pictures if I want it. Or what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Floral Peaks border punch. I'm going to put it into my trimmer at 1 1/4 inch. So those little tops of the peaks of the flowers hit the 1 1/4 inch edge. And then what I'm going to do is tape them to each edge using repositional tape. So what I do is just, repositional tape is tiny little glue dots that come out of your tape dispenser. And you can put this down on your edge like so. I'm going to take the next one, and I'm going to actually do all 4, and then I'm going to show you how to miter the corners. And mitering the corners means cutting your borders on the corner that meet up on an angle so that they meet perfectly. Right now, the borders are just overlapped on the corners. It looks fine. It's not a bad look to it, but I want it to look a little bit more finished and more, I'm a little bit more of a perfectionist when it comes to that. So to miter your edges, you're actually going to take your scissors and cut these borders on a diagonal. And that's one of the reasons also that I used repositionable tape, because this kind of tape, you can actually, it's on there, but you can actually lift it back up. So all I have to do is pick it up and lift it and put it back down, and it'll re-stick. So it's repositional, meaning you can reposition it. So what I do is I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to lift the 2 borders at the same time. They're overlapping perfectly. So I'm going to lift both of them up off the corner. I'm going to cut right from the corner in on a diagonal, following the black line that I drew. And I'm going to take off the little tiny pieces that are extra. One will be on top and one will be on the bottom. And then when I tape it back down, my two corners meet perfectly because I mitered the edge. So I'm going to do that on each corner. Just lift the two edges of the border. And I'm going to cut from the corner in on a diagonal and then just get rid of the excess debris, and your corners are going to look so much more professional. Realizing a lot of little pieces of paper have landed on the floor. Go figure. Like that. Just make sure my corners are in. I'm going to lift both at the same time, cut on a diagonal into the center, and that will give me that mitered edge. And then the last one. Here we go. There is your Argyle page with a frame. Absolutely beautiful. I hope you create it. I hope you enjoyed this this page class. Again, my name is Alice Funk. Have a great day.